Hello, and welcome to Conversations Worth Your While, a show in which I chat with really cool people about interesting topics to spark, inspire, and motivate personal and professional change. I am Linda Bucher, master life coach, mindset mentor, author, and speaker, and I love helping smart, passionate people to lighten their load, unleash their gifts on the world, and live joyful, balanced lives. And today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Daniela Wolfe of Bestie Life, who helps stressed and burnt out professionals to ditch the overwhelming guilt and productively manage their time and daily tasks with ease, while still leaving them time to have space and energy for self-care. And today our topic is Banish Your Burnout. And this conversation is worth your while if you'd love to lighten your load, address the contributing factors to overwhelm and stress, and have some flow and ease in your day. And what we're going to cover is, how do you even know if you're suffering from burnout? And what contributes to burnout? And we'll talk about what you can do today to reduce burnout, and we'll leave you with some resources to help you banish your burnout. So hi, Daniela, how are you today?
I'm great, Linda. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit more about what you do and who you serve?
Sure. So I'm Daniela Wolfe, Bestie Life. I've been a social worker for 26 years. And so professionally, I'm trained in all things mindfulness, self-care, coping skills, as well as personally, I've been on my own journey at one point as a single working mom, being able to overcome my own stress and overwhelm and burnout and taking on that badge of busy of trying to do it all and being all and realizing that's not the key to my happiness, my family's happiness, and really kind of being able to help other women and professionals realize you don't have to do it all. You need to be able to kind of take care of yourself in order to give back to everybody else. That's going to be part of the key to finding that success you're looking for personally and professionally.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so let's jump right in. How does one know if they're actually suffering from burnout? You gave me a really great example, and I would love if you would share that with our audience about stress versus burnout.
Absolutely, because there is a fine line between stress and burnout. And I think we use a lot of those terms interchangeably. And I saw this analogy that I think is such a great visual. So stress is kind of like having a big burning bonfire, and you keep adding more logs to the fire, and it's just going to get huge, and you can feel the heat radiating off of it. Burnout is at the end when there's nothing left. The embers are gray and smoking, and there's nothing left to get that fire going. It's the lack of oxygen. It's that lack of spark. It's that complete dead. And that's the difference between stress and burnout. Stress, we keep adding more and we're making things hotter and bigger. But burnout is when we've depleted that source of energy. We've depleted that fire completely, and there's nothing left.
Yes, I totally get that. And I remember having complete burnout where I had no energy. I'd wake up in the morning and I just could not even drag my butt to work. I couldn't do it. And it wasn't just only work. I was also a single mom. I was widowed, and my kids were young. They were 3, 5, and 7. They were grieving, and I was grieving. And there was so much more to do as a single mom than as part of a couple. And I had, no one to check with. I had to make all these decisions for the kids myself, and the overwhelm, the feeding the fire of stress to myself of what if I mess them up? I don't have another parent to bounce things off of. What if I'm doing it all wrong, right? And feeling as if now I got to be their mom and their dad, right? So putting that on myself, I was feeding so many logs to my bonfire until it was just so, I experienced so much overwhelm that I lost all my energy, and I couldn't. It was so hard to get up and get to work. I'd be late, like an hour late every day. I still set my alarm for 6. I was trying to get there by 8, and I couldn't do it. I was actually my body was not, my body and brain were not on the same page. My body was like, don't make me do it. I can't do it. I don't want to go.
Physiologically, you can at that point. There is so much more than just that mental part of burnout. I think people think like, oh, just, push through, you can do it, think differently. And there is so much more to it because it's mental, emotional, and physiological, but all together, the benefits are huge.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we have some clients, each of us, and we're talking about that they really have a lot in common as far as what they tell us that they want and what they need. So we mentioned that they really want some work-life balance, and they say they want that because they're feeling so out of balance. And one of the things that I always say is when you're out of balance, you're always in a state of shifting and longing. You're shifting your attention over here and longing to be able to do something over there, and shifting your attention over here and then longing to be able to do something over there, because it's so heavy, all these different places that you're shifting to, and then you're longing for something else. So people are longing for this work-life balance because they're not having this balance. They're out of energy, right, at the end of the day. And then at the end of the day, when you are so out of energy and you're so burnt out, it's really hard to be productive. What do you hear from your clients?
Well, and definitely I hear a lot of the same things. I think, that balance, they think everything has to be equal or, some kind of level and equity. And that's not necessarily going to be the case. There might be some days you're all in with your family, or you're doing a lot for yourself, or you're all in with work. And that's okay. I see balance more as your ability to adapt to situations as they come up, your ability to pivot and see the options. Options are huge when it comes to working through your burnout and finding that balance. So pivoting, having some resilience, recognizing even when things don't go well, you bounce back, you don't stay in that place, as well as then having boundaries. Boundaries are really important, not just for you, but it helps everybody around you to know, okay, if you were going to go shopping at a store, if they didn't have what hours posted, you would just keep showing up, maybe thinking they're open, as opposed to knowing, okay, they're open from 9 to 3. You're not going to show up at 4. And it makes it so much better for everybody else, for work to know you're present from this time, your kids to know I'm present from this time. Boundaries are so freeing. And I think they get a bad rap.
Yes. Oh, I absolutely get what you're saying about boundaries. The thing with boundaries is there are 3 things that people need to do in order to be able to be successful with boundaries. You have to identify what your boundaries are. And that doesn't happen on the fly. That's like, you got to give some attention to what, where do I want to set these boundaries? And they're loving boundaries. They're not talk to the hand type of boundaries. They're very loving boundaries. So the first thing is you need to set the boundary and give it some thought and say, what around this particular thing, my time, if I want to not have burnout, I need to, do less. Everybody knows they need to do less. We're all doing too much, right? So I need to set this boundary. What is the boundary? And let me give it some thought. The second thing is you need to communicate that boundary ahead of time, not in the heat of the moment, but ahead of time. But part of setting the boundary is also setting the expectation of what's going to happen when that boundary gets pushed up against, when someone tries to overrun your boundary. You need to pre-identify that. It's like setting the rules, in a basketball game. I'm going to blow the whistle every time you shove another player. So I'm going to communicate that ahead of time so that right, that we're not shoving another player. If you do, like, I hope you don't, but if you do, what's going to happen? I'm going to blow the whistle and then the other team's going to get the ball. Like, that's just what's going to happen. So you communicate it ahead of time so they know what's happening. And then the third thing is you have to enforce it 100% of the time, not some of the time, because that makes a boundary not really a boundary. That makes it like a suggestion. Okay.
Right.
So you really have to enforce it 100% of the time. But it's, again, like that referee. He doesn't get mad at the player, right?
It's not personal.
Somebody. It's not personal. Absolutely.
No. And like you said, it's not an abrasive talk to the hand. Like an example I give is, I have a nighttime routine, and my family knows once I start my nighttime routine, that's my quiet time to decompress. I'm going to read a book. I'm not going to talk to anybody. I need to start turning inward, and it's not a long process. It's like 15, 20 minutes, but they know once I start, I'm not available. I'm just not, and my daughter sometimes that's when she really wants to talk all of a sudden, is at, 10:30 at night when I'm winding down. And I'm like, honey, I need to start my nighttime. I got to start winding down or I'm not going to sleep. And she understands because I am consistent. I do
Right.
say it in a way that's not about her. It's about what I need. Those I
Yeah.
statements that you've probably heard from people over the years in many different ways, I need, and this is how you can help support me in it.
Right, exactly. That's such a great point. A boundary isn't about other people
not
or
a
keeping
wall.
them out. It's not a wall. Absolutely. Yeah. I love your example about it's like posting hours. Like this is just, we're not just available all the time. And I know even early in my coaching practice, I was accepting clients at all different times of day and night. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to work all over the place. I want to have some set hours. But I was graspy at the time and like, well, what if I don't get any new clients? What if they only can meet at 5 o'clock? And that's when I don't want to meet. And it was really tough. So part of it is to give yourself permission to value your own time and to value yourself so that you can set loving boundaries. And they're really loving to other people, but they're really loving to yourself. So
Absolutely.
I'm so glad
because I think we want to people please, and we think making everybody else happy is what makes us happy. And that's not necessarily the case, So even if it's saying yes to bringing snacks in your kid's school or always saying yes to things, if, it's a process and maybe you don't originally just start saying no to everything, because that can be super hard on its own, but maybe yes, but I'm going to pick them up at the grocery store. I'm not going to make them myself,
Right.
And again, just creating a different way to do it that's going to help serve you best.
Yeah. And kind of what we're flowing into now as our second part of what we're going to talk about is what contributes to burnout. And so, many people say yes, when they really mean no. And
because you just assume it's going to make people mad or upset, or that you're a bad person if you don't say yes. And we internalize so many things that are just not true.
Not true at all. And what's really interesting is, first of all, what other people think of us is none of our business, because that's their business, what they think, right? We don't want people telling us what to think. Well, that's, but more importantly, it's not about us. What they think of us is really about them, their own personal experiences, their own insecurities and fears. That's how they see the world. That's how they see everybody else, is through that lens of their own experience. So we cannot change that, and saying yes when we mean no is really trying to manipulate another person into seeing us differently, which isn't fair and isn't going to help anyway. They're going to think of us what they're going to think of us. And I prefer to know the authentic version of people. Don't show me the fake version that says, please like me. That's yucky to me. I prefer the authentic. And I love people who are authentic and accept them and love them for all their faults, because I love to be accepted and loved for all my faults. So
there's no need to, there's a quote I always say to my kids: I'm not Willy Wonka, I don't candy coat it. And so you appreciate the honesty, whether it's, in an acceptance of a request, whether it's in a compliment, to know it's always going to come from a place of authentic, genuine, feelings.
Yeah. And sometimes, especially to our children, when we say no, we're exemplifying for them about boundaries. And because, they'll hear what we say, but they're watching what we're doing with a lot more attention than they're listening. So when they grow up, they're going to see, did my mom bend over backwards to make everybody else happy? And was she happy? Right. And so was she burnt out? Like, I don't want to be an adult, if that's what an adult means, is, that you have no energy left and you're short with other people and you're stressed out and you're burnt out. And, then our kids don't even want to become adults, because that doesn't seem like any fun at all.
Well, we teach them for themselves, but also we teach them how to treat us, and that's the other part to take into account. If they see everybody else is going to just, walk all over us, say, do whatever they want, and that we don't matter and that we're not a priority, they're never going to think of us that way as well. So I think it's important for them to see us as people and not just as their parents. And I'm not saying, be friends with your kids and do whatever they want, but I think, to be able to have that perception of, they go out and do things, she takes care of herself, she's important, her thoughts and feelings matter, is just as important as teaching them math and science and how to do laundry.
Yeah, I completely agree. So the things that are contributing to burnout,
lack of boundaries would definitely be one. Our mindset. is definitely part of it. Those expectations that we assume we need to meet in order to make us a good mom, to make us a good employee, all those expectations that are never even said and people don't even necessarily have, but this, that mindset part of it, of what we assume, the things we think we should do, is a huge part of burnout, and kind of reframing our expectations is going to be so important in getting rid of that.
It is. That's very true. I had a client once who was really suffering from burnout, and she would stress over absolutely everything. Everything needed to be done the right way, the best way, the perfect way. She loved what she did as far as her career. She was a writer. And so she would get asked to write articles for all sorts of publications. She kept saying, yes, 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 yes. And so as we coached through it, we found what was really for her, the main thing that was contributing to saying yes to everything, and which was causing the burnout, was we discovered that she was trying to prove her significance. And that was huge once she realized that. And so I gave her some homework. I said, over the next month until, I think it was like a month. I gave her a homework. I said, we'll meet again in a month. I want you to, on your to-do list, don't make any changes, but at the end of the day, I want you to circle all the things that you know are tied to proving your significance. And when we met again, she's like, oh my God, Linda, it's 75% of what I do. 75%. She goes, that's baloney. She's like, I'm stripping that out.
Yeah, I think we equate productivity with our worthiness, and that's not the case. You can be sitting on the couch enjoying a book and be completely worthy, and that's the thing. We don't have to prove our worthiness. And I love what you were saying too about that perfectionism tying in, because I think sometimes when we only see one way to do things, it's hard to see, an out, whether it's saying no or seeing an option. And I think options, it's not always about eliminating things. It's about seeing other ways to do it. To see those options and that flexibility is how it's going to work, and be doable. Like when you were saying about writing articles, it doesn't have to be sitting and typing. You can be in your car dictating it into a talk to text app, and you've just written an article on your way to Wegmans.
Right. That's true. There's a tool I learned when I was studying to become a coach called the 3 Bs. And it's from Martha Beck. And it's the first B is baguette. So that's the first question. Can I bag it, this activity? Yep. Can I bag it? And the answer is either yes or no. And if the answer is yes, you should bag it, right? Like, and like the underlying question there is like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if I bag it? Because it's a fear, right? The very worst thing. And you can imagine that worst thing, like, well, I guess it's probably not true. If you can bring it to the surface, then it makes it easier to bag it. Because usually whatever you're afraid of, if you're not bringing it to the surface of what it is, you can't look at it logically. But once you bring it to the surface, you're like, oh, well, that's not even valid. Okay. The second B is if you can't bag it, can you barter it? Can you give it to someone else? Right?
I love delegating.
Delegate. Can you pay someone to do it for you? Can you swap something for, like, I hate doing this, but you like doing this and you hate doing that and I like it. Can we do something? Because it takes less energy to do something I love than it does to do something I hate. Right. So can you barter it? And the last thing is, if the answer is no, how can you better it? And that is a beautiful thing. How can you make it better for you? And that doesn't mean giving yourself a candy bar when you've completed it. So we're not talking about unhealthy rewards. How can you better it is usually, for me, a mindset thing. I was filling out the FAFSA form for my son when he was in a private school, when he was in high school, because it was ridiculously expensive. And I'm like, I'm not, this is way too much tuition. I need to get a break here. And I'd filled it out the year before, and it's complicated when, we had all this complicated stuff financially because my husband died and whatever. So when I filled out this form, and this was before it was hooked to the IRS, so you couldn't just press the button to get your tax return. So it would take me like 6 hours, right, to fill this out. And the whole time I was filling it out, when the boys were fighting and my daughter was like, mommy, and I'd be like, oh, I got to fill this out. And so I didn't like it. Could I have bagged it? Yeah, but I didn't want to, because I really wanted to get the aid.
Yeah.
Could I have bartered it? No one else could look through all my file cabinets and pull out all the stupid information I had to put into it. But how could I better it? And I sat there and I thought about it. Well, I'm not showing up my best self for my kids when I'm pissed off about this stupid 6-hour project I got to do. which I don't have to do, but I'm choosing to do, right?
Mhm.
And then I thought about it. I said, wait a minute. I did this last year and I got about a $6,000 aid, right? And I'm like, 6 hours, $6,000. I'm making $1,000 an hour. Woo!
Yeah.
So that's how I bettered it. I shifted my mindset to I'm earning $1,000 an hour when I
Yeah.
never earn $1,000 an hour. Like, this is
Absolutely.
awesome, you know?
When you
So
can't change the activity, if you change the way you think about it, it changes how
Yeah.
you feel, which makes all the difference.
all the difference. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we're kind of like moving into these some strategies for reducing burnout, right? For banishing your burnout. So we're talking about things like this baguette and barter it and batter it tool.
Mhm.
We're talking about setting boundaries. So we've got some good tips for people. What are some easy things that you tell your clients they can do right now today to help them banish their burnout?
The simplest one is the power of a pause. Even if you need to schedule the pause on your phone as an alarm that goes off every couple of hours, to take that pause, to take 1 to 2 minutes of deep breathing, not only mentally gives you a space and a break in your thought and your day, but physiologically, the benefits of deep breathing are huge when it comes to lowering your stress level, releasing certain chemicals and hormones and things like that. And so the power of a pause to do 2 to 3 minutes, even 1 to 2 minutes, because people are like, oh, I don't have time. Just pause, take a couple of deep breaths where you inhale for 4, hold it for 4, out for 4. They call it box breathing. There's different strategies, and have a glass of water at that point too. So hydration and breathing sounds so simple, but they are so just key in moving that needle and being able to make a small, tiny, manageable shift and start changing how you feel mentally, physically, and start moving that needle. Because once you do this, then you might respond to a situation a little bit differently because you took a break and are calmer. Maybe you sleep a little bit better that night because you took some time to start relaxing and take some things out of your space. So it sounds so simple, and it can be. It's just about that consistency of keep doing it. That's why I always tell people, set a reminder in your phone. It goes off. It's that kind of trigger you need to shift your mindset for a quick second, like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be breathing and just relaxing for a minute. And doing that enough, that consistency is what automates it. And when you start automating things, that's when it really has its most power, because you don't have the decision fatigue of thinking about things. It just happens, and that's where you get those benefits. So that would be the first key thing I always tell people from a super easy perspective to start trying.
Right. And even if it is hard sometimes, like, oh, I got to take 2 minutes away from that, but I just want to answer this email. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You can mix, pair it with something else you're already doing, like washing your hands. Do your breathing while you're washing your hands. You're already doing something else, right? That's mindless, right?
Yeah.
Because it's really, burnout and stress is really about the mind. It's all,
Brushing your teeth.
Right. At some point if you can tie it to another activity. Every time I brush my teeth, every time I wash my hand, I'm going to take a couple, 4 breaths, right?
Yep.
That
if you're driving right now while you listen to this, every time you get to a red light, do your deep breathing.
Right. And I love that you're talking about making it be a habit. Another thing that we can do when we're usually overwhelm is caused by fighting fires, like, everyone wants this right now, and by the fact that we put more things on our to-do list per day than we actually tackle per day. That's like a thing.
Yeah.
But it's ever growing. It's like that dough. What is that starter dough? The sourdough?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Friendship bread.
Yeah, friendship bread. Right. It just keeps growing. And then what happens, just like old magazines that you intend on reading, eventually they're obsolete because they've been sitting there so long. So remember that most of your to-do list, the stuff you're not going to get to, is going to be obsolete anyway. Think of it like an old magazine. It's not as essential, right? There's a great book called Essentialism that really asks the question, about is this essential to my own personal goal in this area of my life, right? For say, you just take your relationship with your children. is what I'm doing right now essential? What is the most essential thing for that? And usually the answer for that is to have a great relationship with my children so that they will come to me when they're in trouble, right? They will ask me for advice, right? And if I'm just yapping at them and telling them what to do all the time, that's not going to foster that great relationship with them. So me telling them, what to do all the time is not essential. What's essential is having a great relationship, which might mean I listen better, or I ask them a question when they start talking. Hold on, do you want me to listen, advise, or do? I just want to know this ahead of time, right? So there's questions, things like that. So, and then what's the most essential thing we want for our careers? And is everything that we're doing in alignment with that most essential thing that's most essential to that goal that we have for the career? What's our goal with our significant other? What's our goal for our own personal self? And if our goal is to stop putting logs on the fire of stress so that we don't, run out and have burnout, then what's essential for us to stop doing? I love making a stop doing list. I think that everyone makes a to-do list, but making a stop doing list is probably a really good way to start, something someone can do right now. What will I commit to stop doing so that, and I can give myself permission to have calm, to do things for becoming more calm and reducing the chaos.
I think definitely too, when you talk about that, because I've heard of that concept as well, to look at what are the areas that you find yourself pushing back on, the things you're trying to avoid. And that would be when you would do the baguette, barter, or better it. You know what I mean? Like that would be the first thing to look at,
right?
Stop necessarily doing, because what is it really bringing you and what's its purpose? And when you try and figure out what the purpose of certain things are, is where you can rationally take it off your list. A lot of times we tie feelings to it, but we don't look at it the right way. That, more kind of perspective.
Yeah. So I know you have a resource to help people banish your burnout. So I'd love to feature your resource. Can you tell everyone a little bit about what it is?
Absolutely. So when I work with clients, we go through what I call the chaos to calm method. And so my free resource, though, is I love to share the framework. I want to help as many people as possible with this. And so you can grab a free copy of the chaos to calm framework, and the link I think will be in the show notes below, or it's on my website and on my social media. And you get the exact method that I help clients with one-on-one when we go through this process. So you can see logically like how it flows together, how it works to help get rid of that burnout and that overwhelm and that stress in a way that doesn't seem like you're adding more to do. It kind of just takes some of the things you're doing and reframes and reworks it in a way that's more manageable.
Well, that's beautiful. And I'll definitely put the link to that into the resources below. So thank you, Daniela Wolfe, for being on Conversations Worth Your While.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'm Linda Bucher, and I love helping smart, multi-passionate high achievers to get out of their own way and unleash their potential so they can give their gifts to the world while living balanced lives. So remember to open the description where you'll find some free tools and resources and our contact information for both me and Daniela. And don't forget to subscribe. And once again, I'd like to thank Daniela Wolfe of Bestie Life, as well as you, our audience, for sharing your time with both of us today. And until next time, make sure that you've made this conversation worth your while by fueling the spark it ignited.
Thanks.